Hello, and welcome back to the Far Out Podcast. My name is James, and I am your host who knows the most. How you doing today? Well, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. What a week it's been. We're out of November. Thanksgiving has come and gone, and now we're running into December. Christmas music is in full swing, and snow's falling. It's a cold, crazy time. And we have a lot to talk about because over the course of the last week, in between episodes, I've taken a lot of notes on things I want to discuss, and it's going to be a jam packed episode. But before we get into the main topics, we got a little bit of housekeeping to go through first. Firstly, I want to say that this episode will be Thanksgiving themed in nature, talking about the holiday itself, food, opinions on the food, movies about the holiday, and so on and so forth. But I want to start off first by saying thank you to the truly warm welcome that I got for this podcast because, we're in a day and age now where everyone and their mother has a podcast. I'm sure eventually it'll be a law to where men reach a certain age and that's just something they have to do. They have to stick a microphone in front of their face and belt out their opinions. And, I'm nothing special. I'm just a guy with a mic and a dream. But I want to thank you for helping make that dream come true because I didn't tell anyone I was going to do this. I did this just totally on a whim. Like I said last week, it's been a long time coming. And so when I did make the episode, I just converted it into a link and I texted that to a lot of people. And of all the people I texted it to, about half replied saying, "Oh my gosh, this is great. I can't wait to listen." And about half of the people that replied listened. But there was a strong core of people that were excited and wanted to check it out. But then that number steadily grew. And it's not like I'm pulling in thousands of views or anything like that and hundreds of likes. But at the last time I looked at the previous episode, I saw that I was already over like 80 views and like over 12 subscribers and had a couple of likes and comments on there. I mean, that wasn't the response I was expecting to get. And I mean this. I don't mean this to be facetious or pretentious. I thought this would be a shot in the dark and a flash in the pan. And I thought maybe over time, weeks, months, maybe it would grow into a steady following. But if the first week is indicative of anything to come next, I just want to say thank you so much because the response was mostly positive. Because I'm not going to name names, but there were some people who I did text because I just sent it out at random throughout my Rolodex of contacts. There are people that got back to me, and some of them were like, "You haven't talked to me in 3 years, and the first thing you send to me all this time is a link to your podcast. Screw you." And I was like, you know what? That's fair. I just went, alphabetically, and I realized I hadn't talked to so and so in a while, and probably shouldn't have just sent them a podcast feed, immediately. And some of the responses also were like, "Oh, I clicked on it and it was just audio. Where's the cameras? Where's the funny sounds?" And I was like, "What do you think I am, Joe Rogan? Maybe I'll get there one day, but I'm not there yet." But I kid. I took it all in stride, and it really was positive. And a lot of feedback I got was like about time. I mean, for the people that I sent it to who know me and have known me for a long time, all I talk about is wanting to get on radio. And so a lot of people were like, "Oh, thank God he can finally shut up about it and get on the podcast. And I don't have to listen to him anymore." Again, which is totally fair. Totally fair. But I just want to say thank you for launching this in the way that it did launch. And I hope that this is the first of many. And I don't think this is going to run out of steam anytime soon. I know in the first episode I talked about, I don't know if I want this to be week to week, bi-weekly, once a month, but when my mom, so this is the first thing we'll talk about, is that my mom, she texted me and she was like, "Hey, how was your weekend? How was your last weekend? What'd you do?" And I replied back to her and I said, "Oh, it was great. I went to Minneapolis. I nearly crapped myself at the Mall of America. I went to a casino, lost some money, and then I drove home and I started a podcast." And she was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. You started a podcast?" I, I kid, ma. I kid. If you're listening, don't turn it off. I kid. You know the truth is in there somewhere. But yeah, so she was surprised by that, and my mom, when I told her about what I wanted this to be, or what the idea of what I wanted to be and how I wanted to be like Joe Rogan, she was like, "Oh, okay, like, cool." Because again, she's a prime example of someone who doesn't listen to Rogan. As far as I know, she doesn't. She doesn't listen to Rogan, yet she knows who he is and what he's about, and that's exactly what I want to be, just in a different senses, in a different sense ish. I want to talk about things that interest me. So I'm not gonna really go into like martial arts and drugs and stuff like that. But she was like, "Well, what are you gonna do in terms of like actual like content and parsing it out?" She's like, "Are you gonna have on guests? Like, what are you thinking?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "But I don't know a whole lot about the release of it. I don't know how often I'll do it." And she was like, "You have to release it week to week." She's like, if you want to build it, you have to do it. When did you last do it? When was the first episode? And I was like, it was a Sunday. And she was like, well, you have to do it every Sunday going forward. And she said it very lovingly. I don't mean to put her out like she was, just demonizing it and the whole deal. No, but she was right. She was right, because last week we talked about branding and how Elon Musk had this great brand with Twitter, and then he kind of blew it up for whatever reason. And so my mom was very much on brand, pun intended, when she's like, you need to stick to a schedule. That's how you're going to build relationships with your audience. That's how you're going to build a rapport. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And over the course of the week, as I was writing notes, uh, I just wanted to get back on the mic. I really did. I thought about recording this earlier in the week and then blasting it out this Sunday, but I don't know. I wanted to wait till the week closed out to see if anything would come across my desk that I wanted to talk about. And it did, because the majority of the stuff that I have here in my notes, it actually came Monday, Tuesday, but then there were a few things that trickled in here over the last couple of days. And I'm glad I waited, because there's more to talk about. But let's start getting into things. Let's get out of this preamble stuff. First thing I want to talk about actually has to do with last week, because I was rabbit trailing, because there wasn't any rhyme or reason to this at all. There was no notes. I was just going off the cuff there. And so last week I talked about something that really grinded my gears, or I was going to, and then I segued into Twitter and Elon Musk. And the thing that I alluded to had to do with self censorship on social media. And so I just want to clear the air on that. What I was referring to when talking about this self censorship is that, like on Twitter and YouTube and TikTok specifically, at least those are the big three where I really see this happening, though it could happen elsewhere. But what I was referring to was this idea that things have to be correct enough and polite enough for the algorithm to take off. Because after I launched the first episode of the podcast, I did a little bit of research on the algorithm, figuring out what works, what doesn't. And I don't mean this to be cool or pop, pop rock or edgy or anything like that, or punk rock, excuse me. But I'm gonna try not to play the algorithm. I frankly just don't care, because if this takes off, it does. If it doesn't, well, whatever. And again, it looks like it has. But the thing with the algorithms on Twitter and YouTube is that there are certain words and phrases that they just don't like. Those don't get a lot of traffic. And specifically, they have to do with like violence and these really heavy topics and so on and so forth. And a great example, and I'm sure you've seen this if you've been on Twitter or TikTok or YouTube, you've probably come across this, is that if someone, I don't know, let's say they're talking about World War II, and someone says, uh, Hitler killed himself at the end of the war. Well, on Twitter, for example, they would censor Hitler, so they would replace a letter with like a number or an asterisk or something like that. And then instead of the word killed, they would edit it to unalived. So they would say Hitler unalived himself. And then they would censor the word war or something like that. And I think that's just freaking ridiculous. I really do. And I mean this. I hope I convey this if you follow me on Twitter or check out anything like that. But when I tweet, when I text, I try to use good grammar. I really do. I think grammar and punctuation is super important. And now those are taking back seats because these yahoos, these knuckleheads, want to play to the algorithm to get more views and more likes. They're more worried about their reach than they are about the actual content of the message itself, because you can lose a lot of context when you're worried more about how something is written, not why it's written or what it's for. And so that I just wanted to clear the air on that the self-censorship that I see happening on social media drives me back crap crazy, because like it's nuts. Again, I'll reiterate, punctuation and grammar matter. You should strive for those, and you should strive for clarity. The views and the audience will follow. Okay, so moving on to the next thing. Speaking of a kind of type of self-censorship, uh, I'm going to try to not swear on this podcast, but I'm sure over the course of all the episodes, I will probably let one slip, or a guest will, and it's just going to happen. But I'm going to try not to, because if you've known me for a while, or if you don't know me, I used to curse like a sailor. I mean, I really did. Every other word was an F bomb or an S bomb. This effing food is so effing good. That was me. And so I'm trying to not do that. And hopefully my friends and family have seen that progression in me over the years, but I really don't want this to be a filthy podcast in terms of language. I want this to be educational and rich in the conversations. I don't want this to just be completely off the cuff. But again, I'm gonna let some slip. It's bound to happen. It just is. And same with the guests too. Like if I have a guest on, I'm gonna say, hey, do your best not to swear. But again, if they let one fly out, I'm not gonna worry about it. I don't want you to worry about it either. Plus, as I said earlier, I'm gonna try to do as little editing as possible. I want everything to just be raw and real. So again, if Effenheimer comes out, well, I'm sorry, but we're gonna try to keep that to a minimum. However, However, there are times I will totally swear on purpose to maybe emphasize a point, or to say a joke, or to do like a direct quote. And just to just to kind of tee up that, for example, my favorite joke from The Simpsons, the TV show with all the yellow people. Yeah, in case you don't know who The Simpsons are. My favorite joke, it comes from one episode where Bart and his best friend Milhouse are reading the Bible, and I think they're trying to live their life according to the Bible in a way that only a 10-year-old could. Because I think, or wait, no, Bart is 8, Lisa's 10, right? I can't remember. But anyway, they're kids, so they don't fully understand anything. So they're going through the Bible and they're trying to find how to live while also being rambunctious and whatnot. And then they get to swearing. And Bart says, okay, well, I figured it out. We can say all the swear words in the Bible because they're in the Bible. If we say these words, it's okay because they're in Scripture. And Milhouse looks at him and he says, I don't think that's how that works. And Bart turns to him and says, shut the hell up, you damn ass whore. So that's my favorite joke from The Simpsons, because it just is a string of curses. And again, not trying to swear, but for the sake of the joke, I had to say those words. So again, I'm gonna try not to, but every now and then some might come to the surface. But yeah, The Simpsons, good show on Disney Plus if you want to watch all 812 episodes, because man, they crank those things out like nothing. You can eat them like chips too. I mean, they're only 30 minutes, 22 if you cut out commercials. You can just rip 5 of them, not even have to worry about it. Where does time go? Well, it gets lost in TV and consumption. Anyway, moving on. Thanksgiving has come and gone. I got a lot of opinions about Thanksgiving. Did you give the thanks this holiday season? Do you have a good time? I did, sort of. I worked, but that was my own choice. I volunteered for that shift, and it was fine. I got holiday pay. And then afterwards, I went to Denny's at 1 in the morning. I had a good omelet. I went to bed, and Bob's your uncle. And I got opinions on Denny's too. Believe me, we're going to dive deep into the food conversation this episode. If this episode were a Thanksgiving plate, it's piled high with turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, pie, green bean casserole, and all the other fixins. So much so you might even need two plates. Because Laura knows when you eat Thanksgiving, you overindulge. Go back for seconds, thirds. And this podcast is going to give you a hearty helping of knowledge. This, ladies and gentlemen, the Far Out Podcast is your late night college of useful life knowledge. All right, so let's get into it. So, Thanksgiving. It's not as flashy of a holiday as the other ones. Halloween, I mean that's flash everywhere. You got people in costumes, candy, orange, black, green. It's great. That has its own theme, its own system for how things are done, so on and so forth. And Thanksgiving has that too, but Thanksgiving is really more of a communal thing. It's where people just come together. There's not really a big theme though. I think Thanksgiving is associated with autumn, with fall, football. But there aren't many there aren't many songs about Thanksgiving. There aren't many movies about Thanksgiving. Whereas with Halloween and Christmas, you got songs and movies and shows galore, and then right in the middle, sandwich in the middle, is Thanksgiving. But despite there not being a whole bunch of different shows and music about Thanksgiving, most people might think, well, the show we watch is football. And that's true. That's true. Football is associated with Thanksgiving. But for myself, what I choose to watch, my favorite thing in the whole wide world that I watch around the time of Thanksgiving, and that I try to make a yearly tradition, is the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That movie is my favorite comedy in existence, bar none. I love it. I love it to pieces. I love it more than Happy Gilmore, more than Dodgeball, more than anything that came before it, more than anything that has come after it. That is my favorite one. And I think that is my favorite movie for a lot of reasons. One, because of the incredible cast. You got Steve Martin and John Candy, who play off each other so well. But despite the film being somewhat raunchy and having some foul language, for those of you that have seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. At its core, it is a family film because the film, very simply, the elevator pitch is this: two complete strangers who are trying to get home for the holidays, they collide into one another, and now they are forced to travel across the country to make it home for Thanksgiving. And hilarity ensues. That's it. That's the elevator pitch. And the movie is rated R, which is such a bummer because it doesn't deserve to be. The only reason why is because of the profanity. It's just the swearing. You take out all the swear words, or you condense it down to just a few here or there, you could easily get that movie down to PG-13. And I'll even make an argument you could get it down to PG. Because I really do think it's a family film that's just a little pumped up for adults. It's not grotesque. It's not filthy. It's not actiony or violent or anything like that. It's good family fun about road trips and meeting people and these wacky situations. And so I recommend that movie highly. I haven't watched it yet this year, which is sad because again, Thanksgiving is already passed. But I intend to because I feel that we're close enough to the holiday to where I could definitely sit down and watch it and not have to worry about it. That's also a movie, too, by the way, to where if I were to watch that with a group of friends, and the second the credits roll, if my friends turned to me and said, "You want to watch that over again?" I'd be like, "Absolutely." It's I could just rip it back to back, twice in a day, four times in a week. It doesn't matter. For me, it's just an amazing crowd pleaser. So yeah, I recommend Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which I believe is on Paramount Plus or Paramount Plus. I think, because that's a Paramount movie, so it should be there on that streaming service. But if it's not, I recommend getting it on DVD. Support physical media in the world of streaming. It's good for you. So yeah, that's a great movie. But but though you may not think of TV shows and movies when it comes to Thanksgiving, we may not have a whole lot of songs to sing when it comes to Thanksgiving. What we do think about, without a doubt, is food. We think about food. We think about the long table with all the foods, the feast of many meats and cheeses, sides, pies. you name it. And when you think of Thanksgiving specifically, your mind will go to probably one of two things: turkey and pie. Very understandable, especially turkey. I mean, that is the quintessential image of a large turkey on a platter ready to be carved into. But I'm going to go a little outside the box here. Though I like turkey and I appreciate it, and I think a Thanksgiving meal is lacking when there's no turkey, I'm going to go a little different here. I got to say, between the meats when it comes to Thanksgiving, I prefer ham over turkey. I really do. And I didn't always think that way. It took a few years, it took a few passes for me to come to this conclusion. But I'm going to admit it. I like ham more than turkey. And not even just for Thanksgiving. I think that's how I am just flat on any given Tuesday, that I prefer ham. But in the context of Thanksgiving, so much time goes into preparation for the food, and so much rides on that execution. And I haven't had too many bad Thanksgivings. Like I haven't had the colossal one where like something gets burned or we forget something, or even if like the food's just kind of so, you know. At worst, I've had like a bad dish and I just avoid it. It's not a big deal. In my memory, I've had nothing but good Thanksgivings. However, in my life, throughout my life, I have had bad turkey. And let me tell you something. Bad turkey is awful. Bad turkey can ruin a plate. Okay? If turkey is bad, it is bad. Okay? And when it's good, it's good. It's good. I Turkey to me has never been anything special to write home about. Whether it's white or dark, I prefer dark, but no shade to anyone who prefers white. Good turkey's good. It's good. For me, it does not rule the plate though. But bad turkey, man, that can ruin a plate. When it comes to turkey, high risk, not necessarily high reward, in my opinion. Whereas ham, on the other hand, ham, ham is more reliable. Ham is there when you need it. Ham will not let you down. But even if it did, bad ham, it's fine. Bad ham is fine. It's passable. Okay, bad ham, again, it won't ruin the plate, but it's fine. You might nibble it. You might have it as a special side. You might pick around it. You might combine a bite of ham with the macaroni and cheese. You do what you got to do. If the ham's bad, if ham is good, if ham is good, prepare yourself, because good ham is great. Good ham is a grand slam type of entree. That should be the main course of Thanksgiving, in my opinion. And again, despite me saying turkey is the head of that table, turkey is what's head of the picture, and it's sold and all these gift cards, and you get the stuffed turkeys for the kids. It's the icon of Thanksgiving. Despite that all being true, ham as a food, as a flavor of the table, that's where it's at. That's where your bread is buttered. And so, yes, I have grown to prefer ham over the years as opposed to turkey, which might be controversial. But again, when you come to the Far Out podcast, you are going to get unfiltered opinions and good discussion and food for thought. Again, pun intended. Keeping it with food, though, there was a day I was leaving my apartment, going to work, I think. I don't know. I was going somewhere. And as I was walking down the flight of stairs to reach the atrium, where there's that little gap between the doors of the building, I noticed that there was some loose fruit on the ground, as if someone was rushing up the steps in a hurry or rushing to the door in a hurry. Suddenly, they lost their footing. Fruit fell out of their bowl or off the plate or off of those fancy fruit bouquets who go bad inside of a week and then leaving a place smelling awful. Thank you for that gift. I use air quotes around gift. Fruit bouquets they look great, but unless you eat the whole thing, you're having a bad time there. But anyway, the fruit in question that I saw laying on the floor lost and forgotten, was a travesty. Because, in my opinion, one of the fruits here is a grand slam of the fruits. How ham is a grand slam of the Thanksgiving meal. The fruit in question that I saw was pineapple chunks and blueberries. Let's break this down. If I'm the person rushing through the door, rushing up the steps, carrying my fruit bouquet or whatever, my bowl of fruit, and I stumble and drop a few pieces, and I realize that the fruit in question is blueberries and pineapple, if I saw it, I'd stop and pick it up. Not saying I'd put it back in the assortment. I don't want people eating ground fruit, but I don't know if I could leave that behind. I don't know if my conscience can handle that because, in my opinion, pineapple is the top three fruit. Top three. For me, personally, my favorite fruits and what I think are the best fruits are in this order of top three. And number one, grapes. Doesn't matter if they're green or red, you got grapes. Number two, pineapple. Love pineapple. And number three, you got apples. Can't beat an apple. It's the quintessential fruit. It's the face of fruit. How the turkey is the face of Thanksgiving. And then blueberries. I like them. They're good. I'd say they're at best top 5 and worst top 10. But for me, pineapple, boy, that would be a hard sell for me to leave that behind because here's the thing. Let's break this down. First, with grapes. Grapes, you could eat them frozen, semi-frozen, cold, doesn't matter. For me, grapes are the best fruit because to me they are in parallel with cereal. The reason why I love cereal, by the way, cereal is my favorite food of all time. You can eat that for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I feel grapes are the same way. You can have them any time of the day, and as they are in parallel with cereal, the thing about cereal is that you essentially get a drink while you eat. Okay? Unless you have it dry, which some cereals you can, but usually you have it with milk. Okay? You're getting that good crunch and those bites, and then you're also getting a little drink of milk while you're eating your cereal. That's why I like cereal so much. It's a multi-tool food. Okay? That's why I like it. And there's lots of flavors, and it's sweet, and it's horrible for you, but man, it tastes good. With grapes, though, you take out the horrible factor. Grapes are not only good for you, they're also sweet, and you have that same factor going on as with cereal. With grapes, you have the bite, the crunch, the snap, depending on cold, or the cold level, excuse me. And then you got the juice. You got the juice. And it's refreshing, and it just, a good grape, man, that can wet your whistle. I myself prefer green grapes. Oh, I just said that out loud, and I don't know if that's true. I might prefer red, as I just said it out loud, because man, I mean, if red is a 10, green is like a 9, 9.5. I have to think about that. But I love grapes. You can't go wrong with grapes, in my opinion. If there's a bowl of grapes out and it's, come one, come all, I'm going to that bowl several times. Grapes are a grand slam fruit. Then you got pineapple. Pineapple, pineapple, pineapple. Very diversive fruit, in my opinion. Because pineapple has found its way into several different food groups. Most notably, most honorably, or dishonorably, depending on where you fall, is pizza. Pineapple pizza. Do you like pineapple on pizza? Do you think it belongs? Should it belong? Should it not? What do you think? Me, specifically, I love pineapple on pizza. Love it. It's my favorite kind of pizza. Over pepperoni. Over taco. Over cheese. Over supreme. By the way, cheese pizza can take a walk. I wouldn't cross the street for cheese pizza. Pizza already has cheese. Okay, the idea that we're dedicating a whole flavor group to one of the ingredients is asinine. But anyway, getting back to pineapple, I love pineapple pizza because it's that sweet and salty factor. You can't beat that. That's a home run combo. I wanted to say grand slam, but I shouldn't say that too often. I don't want to get repetitive. But it's amazing. Pineapple on pizza is amazing. Let's say that's not your style though. Let's say you bump into that. Okay, I respect that. Pineapple also goes great on burgers. I've had pineapple on burgers. Because again, it's that sweet and salty factor. Yet with a burger, you're getting a different palate there. You're getting more meat. Maybe you're getting some ketchup and mustard in there. Maybe you're getting a little more veggie options as opposed to pizza. I think pineapple works great in regards to other food groups. I think it works great on pizza and burgers. But pineapple for me, like just by itself, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. Similar to grapes, I could just pop pineapple chunks all day long. Yeah, again, it's really sweet. It is. You kind of got to pace yourself. But that juice, you can't beat that juice. I have cans of pineapple chunks in my apartment right now, and I'm looking at where they are in the cupboard. I might have one later after this episode because in the cans that I buy, those things sit in their own juices. So you take out the chunks, you eat them, they're wonderful, and then you got that can of pineapple juice. And pineapple juice is really good, and I hear it's also good for you. When I had an upset stomach, my grandmother would give me pineapple juice because it's supposed to settle things, going on and whatnot. Probably could have used that at the Mall of America. That might have helped me avoid a few pitfalls there. I don't have any, but if I did, might have helped. Yeah, pineapple juice is amazing. And if you haven't had pineapple in a while, I don't blame you because I don't think it's very high up on the fruit tier system when you think of fruits. Because I think when you do think of fruits, you think of apples, blueberries, strawberries, bananas, and then pineapple's kind of the lost and forgotten one. But not to me. Top two fruit. Top two. And then apples are top three. And what's there to say about apples? It is the fruit. It's the fruit. Okay, there's a whole company of technology that makes phones and whatnot called Apple. So even if you don't know, even if you don't eat apples on the regular, you know what apples are because it's probably in your hand 100 times a day. So there's very good branding there too. And it's got the moniker an apple a day keeps the doctor away, so on and so forth. So yeah, apples are wonderful. They're great. A little overblown in my opinion because kind of similar to turkey. A bad apple is bad. Like a bad apple can ruin your day. A bad apple will not keep the doctor away. It'll make the doctor come closer. He's going to ask you, "Are you okay? You don't look good." But a good apple, I mean, forget about it. That's it. So those are my top three. Those are my top three in fruits. I'm going to keep it with fruits though for a bit there because over the week I saw Gladiator 2 for the second time. It might be the last. I might go back one more time if some friends were like, "Hey, let's go see it." But I don't know if I'll go out again by myself. But it's funny I say that because I actually liked the movie more the second time around than the first. I thought it made more sense and I understood things better, which is honestly kind of a knock against the film because if it's one you have to see twice to really get, I don't know how many people are going to go back for repeat viewing. You really only get one shot when it comes to movies. Because some people who don't understand it, who might not like it, they're usually not going to think, I like that just enough. I'm going to watch it again. No, usually people, if they don't like it, they leave it. And if they love it, maybe they'll watch it again over the course of the coming weeks and months. More than likely, it'll be out of its theatrical run. But I went back for a second time, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was better than the first time. What I noticed, though, was a lack of something that is a crime to filmmaking and to kids everywhere who went through history class. There were no grapes in Gladiator 2. Or let me rephrase that. I didn't see any scenes of the emperor or someone in a high seat of power being fed grapes off the vine, which is something that kids grew up thinking was a quintessential part of the Roman Empire, that time of history, is you have people lying out on these long beds overlooking the Colosseum watching a fight happen, and you have the emperor being served grapes by a servant where they lower the stem, the emperor takes a bite off of the grapes, and then they lift it back up, and then the thing just repeats. That's like a quintessential history thing when you think of that time period, and that wasn't there. That wasn't there. And what's even more of a travesty is that I don't think that was in the first one either. Granted, I haven't watched the first one in a couple of months, but I feel like I really would have remembered that. And what's even worse is that in the second one, minor spoiler, but I mean, it's not really, it's in the trailers and all that stuff. There are two emperors. There are co-emperors. So you have literally two bites of that apple to get one of them to say, "Bring me my grapes," while they're loading the Colosseum with water and sharks and stuff. By the way, that happens in the movie. In Gladiator 2, they flood the Colosseum and have naval battles, and there are sharks in the water. It's awesome. It's awesome. But yeah, there were no grapes. There was no scene of them eating grapes really pretentiously, and I think that's a missed opportunity because, again, give shout out to grapes. But if I ever made a movie set in that time period, you know darn well I'm going to have a scene of the emperor, the general, or a senator, whoever, who's going to be just chilling out and he's going to have grapes fed to him off the vine. I'm going to make darn sure that's in there. Because, yeah, it was really, really sad to see a lack of that in Gladiator 2. Seamless segue. The Vikings won today. I don't want to make this podcast entirely about Minnesota sports. I don't want to be region locked to where people who are not in the Midwest don't care about this, but they're my team. I drank the purple Kool-Aid a couple of years ago. And so now we're going to talk a bit about the Vikings. They won against the Arizona Cardinals. They shouldn't have. I'll just say that outright. That was a dirty game of football, and not dirty like it was inch for inch, play after play, throw for throw. No, no. For the longest time, that was a game of just kicks only. There were lots of field goals there, and Aaron Jones, star running back, former Packer, welcome to the Vikings. We love you, we appreciate you, but I mean, what's going on here? He fumbled the ball himself at least twice. Might have been three times. I can't remember. But it was not good. It was not good football. It's not entirely his fault. It's not because Slinging Sammy, Sam the Man, Darnold Dimes, he drove the ball down the field. He did what is required of him. So good for the Vikings, but I get it why people are not talking about this team. When you follow the circuit of the NFL, who are they talking about? The Lions, the Chiefs, a little bit of chatter on Steelers. And then you got a few ancillary teams who are just in shambles. You have the Jets, who, again, we're not going to talk about the Jets all darn day, and Rodgers, but they're still in shambles. You got the Panthers, shambles. And you got the Bears, the Chicago Bears, in shambles because they just fired their coach for his poor time management and other stuff. But no one's talking about the Vikings, despite us having an incredible record. But I think it's partly because we don't have a flashy QB, and it's because we're winning in these ugly, ugly ways. We won by 1 point. And I'll just be honest, when I think of the Cardinals, I certainly don't think of defense. And I don't think of an outstanding offense either. To me, they're a very middle of the road team. Sorry to all my Arizona listeners out there, but for me, it's just the truth. I thought we were going to walk this ball into the end zone multiple times. That did not happen. That did not happen one bit. Despite a win for my team, despite me being happy about that, there's also an undercurrent of sadness because football season is winding down. We are now in December. The Super Bowl is in February, and then that's it. And we have to wait. It's another dry spell where you have to follow all the signings, ask ourselves a lot of questions: who's going where, making any trades, yada yada. Football is if the football season were divided up into quarters like the game, we're now in the fourth quarter, and that's sad. That's really sad because I love watching the Vikings week in, week out. Haven't missed a game yet, and I don't intend to. But It's coming. Eventually, the season will end. What's terrible is that now where I live, which is again North Dakota, winter is fast approaching, if it isn't here already officially. But I can feel it. I'm wearing more layers. It's colder. I don't want to be outside as long, and that's just it's terrible. There are things I'm really gonna miss about the spring, summer, and fall times of the year. Funny enough, one of them is something I haven't done in a long, long time. I really crave a good swim. I haven't gone for a good swim in a hot minute. And yeah, I could go to pools. They're fine. They're fine. But I want to go to a lake. I want to go to a river. I want to dive in. And now I won't be able to do that. Everything's going to be too cold and frozen. And yeah, again, pools are there, but it's like, unless it's a public pool, you got to get a hotel room and yada yada. But I realized this. I haven't gone for a good swim in a long time. And swimming is a great exercise. Works the whole body. Chest, back, arms, legs, everything. It's great. It's amazing. And maybe I just need to go to the gym and get some good cardio. But I was thinking about that. I was just like, man, I want to work out, but a swim not only sounds like good exertion, but also relaxing in the same way. And soon that's going to be a lot harder for me to get access to because it's getting so cold out, which is a bummer. But again, keeping it with food, swimming in a pool brings forth an incredible choice of food option. Because kids, similarly to how we remember Roman emperors being delivered grapes off the vine, I'm sure y'all can also recollect with eating a pool sandwich after swimming. And you should know exactly what I'm talking about. A pool sandwich, get some ham on there, or turkey, but get a ham sandwich, turkey sandwich, and then you put chips on the sandwich. Grand slam sandwich, that is. Holy cow. Like something so simple, yet hits the spot every time. And it really is. You could have that sandwich just after a day of work, sitting at home watching a movie. It doesn't hit the same. There's something about eating that after swimming that just satisfies. And it's got to be that you're dehydrated, you're tired, and you have just this overload of salt coming with the chips and the meat and whatever. You get a little bit of butter on there too. Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, baby. Yeah. So I think what I might actually miss more than swimming is the gosh darn pool scene, which but again, for it to really hit is I have to have it after I swim. But there's things about our childhood that just work. We just remember them so fondly, and I do remember getting chips, usually Lay's, which again, not a great chip on their own, but you pile that on to your sandwich, you squish it between the two halves of the bun. Yeah, that's some good food there. I tell you what. Tell you what. That's a good sandwich. We're gonna keep it with food still. We're gonna keep it with food. I hope this sounds natural, by the way. I'm kind of just going through all these topics here, but I have notes, but I want this to come off naturally as well. So I hope it works out when I listen back to this. And please, even if you don't like it, please listen. Please click and listen. Please, I'll do anything. Because again, you got to play the algorithm to the rhythm of the interwebs. But yeah, I got a lot of food topics here, so I'm just going through the list here. So a pool sandwich is an incredible sandwich, but where else can you get an incredible sandwich? And this, kids, is the real, perhaps, meat and potatoes of today's episode. Because we're going to have a conversation about some places where you can get said food items, one of them being sandwiches, specifically burgers. And yeah, I had to think about this one for a bit. What I'm talking about is Denny's versus IHOP versus Perkins. Denny's, IHOP, and Perkins. A hearty and healthy trio of the breakfast type of foods, and lunch also. but usually breakfast. And the reason why I bring up sandwiches and really burgers is because each one of these does something really well that can bring a lot to the table, that can really be good for what you're feeling in terms of food and nourishment, especially when you're looking to get this stuff too. But IHOP, remember, kids, they tried to really introduce, with a lot of authority too, burgers. They pushed burgers. Remember when IHOP did a branding change, stunt thing, whatever, and they changed their name to IHOB? So instead of P for pancakes, it was B for burgers. You know, they said they're the international house of burgers because they wanted to push burgers. They wanted to brand out. Again, branding is important. Tell that to Elon Musk. And IHOP said, we got to change. We got to add more to the menu. We got to spice things up because those Denny's and Perkins kids down the block, they're taking our business. So they go burgers. I've never in my entire life had anything at IHOP other than breakfast food. But like, to me, that just doesn't make sense. You're called the International House of Pancakes. Even if I don't want pancakes, I'm thinking breakfast. I'm thinking breakfast. Pancakes is in the name. Pancakes is a breakfast food. And then they go for burgers. Here's the thing. No shame, but I'm going to throw some shame. If you're out with the fellas, you're drinking a little bit, and now you're walking down the street, and you're laughing and talking, and someone says, oh, I'm famished. I could go for a burger. One of your other fellas says, yeah, me too. Where should we go eat? And then if the third guy brings up, well, how about IHOP? That's nuts. Who goes to IHOP for a burger? I mean, come on. I like who? Like seriously. Really? Really. Their burgers can't be good. They certainly weren't cuz that stunt of rebranding didn't last. And again, I like IHOP. I think it's great. Of the three, it's my favorite between Denny's, IHOP, and Perkins. It is. It is, and I'll get into that in a minute. But IHOP is the home of breakfast, not burgers, not lunch, not dinner. In fact, when you go to IHOP late at night, you go for breakfast food. You go for the comfort food. You don't go for burgers. So despite how much I like IHOP, excuse me there. Yeah, their whole rebranding thing was stupid. IHOP, International House of Burgers. More like International House of Bitches. I mean, come on. Come on. If you're gonna, try to rebrand, at least follow through. Stick the landing, gosh dang it. But yeah. But yeah, that's IHOP. But the thing about IHOP though is that despite me taking them out to the pasture there is that I think IHOP is the best of the three. Because I think of the three, it is the most well, you know what? I was going to say that, but now I don't know. I was going to say it's the most comfort. It offers the most comfort in terms of food, but Perkins has that in spades. It does. Because here's the thing about Perkins. I don't love Perkins. I respect it. I like Perkins. It's good. I don't consider it great, but it's good. It's a real good silver medal, in the breakfast department. It's fine. I'm not saying it's in second place. I actually put Denny's second, then Perkins third, so that was a bad analogy. But Perkins is fine. But what they lack, I think, in food, because again, you think of IHOP, you think of pancakes. And then when you think of Denny's, I think most people think of omelets or eggs. Perkins, I don't think really has that. If they do, it's their desserts, I think, because they normally have a large display case of their pies and their brownies and stuff like that, their cakes. But I don't know, because I haven't been to Perkins a whole lot. And when I haven't, it's been great. But what I think Perkins really excels at, what I think they have in spades compared to the other two, is the atmosphere. I think Perkins is the best looking of the three. I think it's the most homey of the three. And I think Perkins honestly kind of looks and feels like your grandmother's house. And a lot of it goes into that color design that they have. They got the browns and the greens and the kind of the olive wine colored purples going on there. By the way, I have some wine with me here, and I haven't drank any yet. But I got this right before I decided to come home and hop on the microphone. I am drinking, what's this called? Mountain Shadow Red Blend 2021. Not an expensive wine. I just picked it up kind of last minute. But again, it's Thanksgiving time, and so I figured, you know, wine is a close enough food to Thanksgiving. Or yeah, it's associated with Thanksgiving enough to where if I could have some now, it'd be fine. So I'm gonna take a sip of this here. Hold on just a second. Mmm, that's got a oaky afterbirth. Not great. No 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 ill will towards Mountain Shadow. Never heard of you till today, but that's that was something. I'll drink it, but I don't love it. But anyway, as we were talking, you know, Perkins has that vibe. It has that tone that I think is very. It's got good appeal because, and I don't mean this as a flex or whatever, but uh, when I've gone on dates in the past, more of them have rendezvoused or have ended up at Perkins than IHOP or Denny's. Because Perkins, again, is the better looking of the three. It's the best one. When you're out on a date, you gotta show your lady or your man some class, depending on who you are. You gotta show some class to your partner there. And Perkins has that in spades. They got that look down. IHOP, I think, has the best food. I think it has the most friendly atmosphere. And there's nothing wrong with going out to IHOP because I've done that many times with friends. But what both of them lack when it comes to Denny's is that accessibility. Because Denny's is like the poor man's Waffle House. And Waffle House, I know it's not expensive, but follow me here. Stay with me now. IHOP down south, that's the king of the breakfast. Rightfully so. If all four were in my neighborhood, Waffle House, all day, all night, no questions. Yeah, of the four, if I had to rank them all, Waffle House, IHOP, Denny's, Perkins. But we got to take Waffle House out of here because unless I go down to Kansas City, I won't find a Waffle House. I recommend. You haven't been to one? I recommend going to find one. It's amazing. You can watch a fight there for free while you eat your pancakes and your, or excuse me, while you eat your waffles and your greasy hash browns. You know that. Yeah, at Waffle House you get dinner theater there with a fight between the cooks or a fight between patrons who stumble in drunk at 2 a.m. It's amazing. Denny's is a staple of a rendezvous point, specifically late night, after a concert, after a dance, after a wedding or whatever. Much like Waffle House, Denny's is open day and night, 24/7. In fact, after I finished my shift for Thanksgiving Thursday, where I work, I went to Denny's because of the three of IHOP, Perkins, and Denny's was open. They were open 24 hours that night. So I went there and it was great. It was perfect comfort food. And by the way, their omelets are amazing. I forgot how good their omelets are. I had a Philly cheesesteak omelet, blew my doors off. Blew my doors off, especially because I know it hit different at 2 a.m., but follow me here. That thing had the omelet itself, cheese in there, peppers, steak bites, like chopped up steak bits, and mushrooms. Oh, yeah. That was amazing. I ate that thing almost too fast. It was that good. But that's what Denny's has. They have omelets down and they have accessibility down because that's where you think of going to when you're out for a late night and you're looking for something to eat and you're famished. And again, concerts have that under lock and key. I've been to many concerts and all of them have rendezvoused either at a Denny's or sometimes like a Taco Bell, or we just go back to the hotel if we have food prior. But of all the concerts I've gone to, I can't think of a single one that has gone to IHOP afterwards or Perkins. Perkins, like I said, after dates, I've taken girls to Perkins. to close out the night. And then like school dances, I have gone to a few Perkinses, and they're fine. But yeah, um, Denny's, IHOP, and Perkins, I think each bring something unique to the breakfast table. But of the three, I got to go with IHOP because I think their food tastes the best. I think their pancakes are a home run, and I think that if you're looking for pancakes, you go there. If you're looking for an omelet, you go to Denny's. If you're looking for atmosphere, you go to Perkins. But I again, I really think IHOP has Denny's beat because in addition to the pancakes, what you can also get there is, normally you think of chicken and waffles. At IHOP, you can get chicken and pancakes, which I've had. IHOP makes good chicken, despite me going at them with a freaking hammer over their burgers fiasco. They have good chicken. I've had amazing chicken and pancakes at IHOP, and so if you haven't been to an IHOP in a while, I don't blame you because again, Denny's kind of rules that market of the late night spot. But again, of the three, I recommend going to IHOP because I think it's a little underappreciated and I think you should check them out. Give them your business. They deserve it. And keep the burgers to Burger King, McDonald's, Shake Shack, Steak and Shake, and so on. All right, moving on. Moving on. Speaking of how rebranding doesn't always go well, this isn't really a rebranding, and I thought I could seamlessly get this segue in here, but I probably can't. Um, I want to talk about baseball because I love baseball, despite me talking about football and how we're in football season. Uh, I miss baseball. It's my favorite sport out of all of them, and I love it just for the length of it. 162 games. They're all hours long. Before the pitching clock, you could spend a whole day at the ballpark. It wouldn't be outrageous for a game to go 4+ hours. And I loved that. I remember going to games as a kid, and people would bring papers with them to the ballpark. It was great. It was great. You could spend the whole day there. Not really financially advantageous. You have to pay $10 for a bottle of water. But if you can afford it, if you can budget it, you could spend a whole day there. Now you can't really do that because of the pitching clock and games get done in less than 3 hours, which is a bummer. But, there's all this talk when it comes to baseball that the game is dying, that it's dwindling, because sports like basketball and football have risen so much that people are kind of leaving baseball. And maybe to a degree that's true. Maybe to a degree it's not as predominantly known as it once was because it was known as America's pastime. When you think of America, you think of apple pie and baseball. And I think people still do. I think it's the most patriotic of all the games. But there's not as much fanfare for it as there used to be. At least that's what I think right now. But there's still a lot of appreciation for it. And I think that if baseball ever truly did decline, like rapidly and steadily in America, for those that love baseball, have no fear because Japan will easily pick up the baton and will carry baseball on. Because baseball it's a diverse, multicultural, multi-international sport. We pull people from America, Puerto Rico, which I know technically is a U.S. territory, but stay with me. Mexico, Germany. Shout out to Max Kepler. I hope he stays with the Twins, but Lord knows he probably won't. And then we got, in addition to that, we also have Japan. And baseball is huge in Japan. It's huge. It's why you get these studs like uh, Shohei Ohtani. I think I said his name right, and all these other amazing athletes. Baseball is huge in Japan. And so I think that if the game ever did kind of lose itself in America, I would have no fear, baseball fans, because I think it would be adopted pretty easily and pretty quickly by Japan. Because in Japan specifically, there's a high amount of fans who love the Dodgers. Go Doyers, And so if they can latch on to a couple of teams there, I think baseball will be just fine. Again, I did not segue this properly at all, but I was just thinking about about football ending and how I miss baseball so much. Funny enough, though, the Minnesota Twins, are potentially being sold. I think that's going to happen. It maybe should have happened a long time ago, but who knows? Um, and I'm not saying they will go out of the the Midwest region. But if they did, they went elsewhere. Um, the rebranding of the Twins could lead to more fanfare happening in Japan. I think if Japan latched on to a few other teams like the Twins, I think baseball itself would be totally fine. I'm not thinking it's going to happen with the Twins because I don't think they're going to leave. Well, I honestly don't know. I mean, most people don't think the Twins will leave Minnesota. I don't know that for sure. It depends on who buys. If a billionaire, billion with an illion, buys the Twins and he's based out of, um, you know, I don't know, Atlanta, horrible pick because there's already a team there. Um, who's to say that he won't move the team there? I don't know. I don't know. But there is this idea that the team could move, but a relocation could be good for the team. But then, would it still be the Twins? Would it still be the Twins we all know and love? Because the actual name is tied to the Twin Cities of Minnesota. So would you keep the name but not its legacy? I don't know. Um, but yeah, horrible segue. But I wanted to talk about baseball for a little bit here. But in hindsight, I should have done this differently because I just looked at my notes. But speaking of rebranding and of teams changing names and sports and stuff, we're going to jump back to football now for a bit. The Washington Redskins might be coming back, which is crazy. It's crazy. If you don't know or if you don't care about sports at all, Washington, that entire football organization went through many name changes to the team in the course of just less than a half decade. And for the longest time, they were known as the Washington Redskins with that cool, iconic logo. And then there came a time when they were known literally just simply as the Washington Football Team, which is terrible because they couldn't come up with a team or a moniker in time for fans to latch onto for the next season. Just what a disservice that was. But then they settled on the Washington Commanders, which I admit, after some thought, I actually like the name. I don't like it more than the Redskins, but I like Commanders. Thing is, though, that their logo is terrible. They just got the big W, just the big burgundy W. There's no cool logo. It doesn't pop off on jerseys and hats and stuff. And I think that's part of the problem now. Why Redskins has come back into the conversation because there's talk that the logo and potentially the name could come back to the team. And I think that has a huge factor to do with low sales. I think if you look year after year of Washington's NFL appeal, I think the sales reflect people not embracing the new names and missing the old ones. And just before I got on the mic, I looked at some statistics about the average spending of fans, and some fans, excuse me, some fans spend upwards of $100 averagely when it comes to merchandise. Some get upwards into the 120s, 130s, even 140s. But you look at 2024 for the Commanders in terms of their merchandise sales, and the average fan is spending around $80. So there's a lot of money left on the table there. By the way, that statistic comes from Yahoo. When I did a quick Google search, it came from Yahoo Sports. For those that want to look into that, but I think that that's an epitome of everything. I think that encapsulates a lot of what's happening with the team there. I think their ticket sales are down. I think fan morale is down, and that's reflecting in dollars being spent. And there's less jerseys coming off the walls and less hats being sold. And I think people miss the Redskins, and they didn't embrace the football team or the Commanders like Washington had initially thought. And now there's talk that the team name could come back, that there's quote unquote good faith conversations happening amongst Native Americans and the NFL and different ownership groups. Um, and so I think that that's good. I think that that's good that it could come back. I've heard some people say that it might just be the name and not the logo. I've heard others say it'll just be the logo and not the name. But some people are going to want all or nothing. But I think at the very least, I think if Washington could get back that iconic logo, I think that would be enough to kind of restart this whole thing. Because Commanders as a whole is not a bad name, but just they don't have a good brand appeal right now. But I think that this actually opens up a wider conversation about things. Is why did the name go away in the first place, and why is it coming back now? I'm going to operate under the fact that it is coming back. Well, if you know your history well enough, or even if you just decided to Google this, a lot of this rebranding for many different companies and team names and products started uh, in the wake of the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. That was, I believe, 2020, but don't quote me on that. Please don't quote me on that because I don't honestly remember. But I do remember around the summertime of 2020, that's when conversations started to get really fervent about these names being changed. And it happened to several teams. It happened to the Cleveland Indians for baseball, who are now the Cleveland Guardians. By the way, just a sidebar, going down a side street here. I like the Cleveland Guardians rebrand. I do. Is it perhaps pandering a little bit to get rid of the Indians and go to the Guardians? Sure, but as a rebranding venture, I think they did a great job because I think the name is good, Guardians, and I think their logo is awesome. The one logo that I really like has a baseball, just the ball itself, and then it has two capitalized G's on either side of it, and the G's extend uh, backwards into angel wings. So it looks like a snitch from Harry Potter. It looks like the golden orb that they chase in Harry Potter when they're playing Quidditch. Gosh, I can't believe I just pulled that out of my head. I haven't thought about Harry Potter in years. But it's a baseball with wings. It's got angel wings on the side. And I think that logo is awesome. I'm not a Cleveland Guardians fan, but if I was, I'd buy that merch. Uh, but the problem though is that they did it correctly. The Washington football team did not, and then they went to the Guardians and Guardians. They went to the Commanders, and they still didn't pull it off well. Uh, but what didn't happen was the hammer did not come down on the Kansas City Chiefs, but it did come down on the Redskins. Why is that? From what I could gather, again, just by a quick Google search and by looking at old articles, was that the consensus was the Redskins was representing Native Americans in a bad way. The consensus for the Chiefs was that they were representing Native Americans in a good way or in a neutral way. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know how that tracks because you have that logo, that branding everywhere. You have the Kansas City Chiefs who play at Arrowhead Stadium. They do the tomahawk chop when they're going for a touchdown or they just scored a touchdown and whatnot. Um, there's a lot of, you know, iconography that plays into Native Americans that I never thought did it in a bad way. Yet, when you go to the Redskins, the iconography was perceived in a bad way. And I don't know how one escaped and one didn't. And funny enough, though, this kind of thing has been happening for years, for decades prior, because back in my home state of North Dakota, our state hockey team was known as the North Dakota Sioux, the UND Sioux. That was our logo and our team name was the Fighting Sioux. We had that logo, and if you don't know what that is, if you don't follow college sports, our logo very much resembled the Detroit Blackhawks logo for hockey. It was very close to that. which, by the way, that actually started my appreciation of the Blackhawks when I was younger because of the similarities in the logos there. That's how that took off for me. So there was already branding there too. Again, everything comes back to branding. But I remember when I was a kid and they announced that the Fighting Sioux logo was going away. And I'm not an expert on this. I'm not well read on this, but from what I not only remember and from what I've read up recently, if you look back on history, was that kind of discussion, should we change the name, started inside of the NCAA. I can't confirm that. I don't know that for certain. But from what I've heard, that started internally at the NCAA. And then that expanded outwardly into these Native American groups that then came on to talk about, should we rebrand the name? And if that's true, then if that's true, it's this campaign, perhaps on both fronts and perhaps even on three fronts when you incorporate the Guardians in as well. It sounds like these all started outside of Native American populations, which I don't think is correct. I think that if those people groups are fine and if they feel they're being respected in the representation via the teams, I think they should stay. Now, there are going to be some who push back. And as they go and they read history, you will read up about how some people in the Native American populations didn't appreciate the Sioux logo for the hockey team, nor did they appreciate the Redskins logo for the football team. And I acknowledge that and I respect that. There are groups who weren't on the same page as others. But for years, for decades, we had those logos. And then these things started to change. And part of them started before the death of George Floyd, and some of them started after. And now, today, in the year 2024 of our Lord, we're more focused on race than we've ever been before, at least in my lifetime, in my memory, in my 26 years of living. We're more focused on race now than anything else. What's interesting, though, is that, again, I'm a conservative and I'm a Christian conservative, so you're going to get that kind of lean from me when I talk about these things, is that I don't think it's a coincidence that now these conversations are coming back about the Redskins after the 2024 election. Donald Trump is now set to take office. I don't think we'd be talking about the Redskins coming back had Kamala Harris and the Democrats won, because there is a side of politics who steer more into the importance of race and religion and ideology, and there is one that doesn't. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out who prioritizes that more than the other one. So I think there is a change happening. I think that there is this type of mindset shift in the populace that I think is becoming less dependent on race, who's becoming less sensitive to race. And I think that's good because, and I don't mean this as just the typical poster for this stuff, but I remember as a kid learning about Martin Luther King Jr., and he preached about how we should define people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. And that's true. I think that's really, really true. And I think that that's what we should strive for. And so I think when it comes to representation in anything, movies, TV, sports, what have you, I think we should try to do it respectfully, but not abandon legacy, not abandon tradition, and not change things for the sake of just changing them. If a change has to happen, that's a different story. But a change under the guise of, well, this could be perceived as being wrong, I think that's an issue. And so I think that if the Redskins logo comes back, I think it'll be good for representation for minorities and for different people groups. And I think now we're coming into a new era of thinking where hopefully we won't be so focused on race, religion, colors, and creeds. I hope not. I hope that is the case. I hope we're not going to be so focused on that. But what's interesting though is that the last topic I want to talk to you about does segue into this, and I wanted to have this at the as the last pointer because I wanted to leave you with some real things to think about in regards to representation, and that has to do with movies. Uh, James Bond is a legendary character in filmmaking and storytelling in novelization. Remember, James Bond started out as spy novels. Then he got turned into movies. Now we all know who he is. But James Bond has endured over the decades across numerous films, played by many actors. And for all the actors, they've all been white men. Usually, almost exclusively, they've been white men with brown or darkish hair. And then Daniel Craig came onto the scene, who was the first James Bond who was blonde. And that in of itself caused huge uproar online. I wasn't a part of that discussion then because I wasn't really old enough to be a part of that online circuit, because I think his first movie came out in 2008. Um, but yeah, looking back on it now, there was an uproar that you can't have a blonde James Bond. In the books, it says that he has dark hair or brown hair. You know, this is a travesty. You're rewriting the character. And then what happened? Daniel Craig gets casted as Bond. He actually refused to dye his hair. The studio wanted him to dye his hair. He said no. The studio went, well, he's good. You know, we're not going to recast him just for the hair color. And now look at him. Daniel Craig is considered by some to be the best Bond. And he potentially has the best Bond movie in the entire legacy, that being Casino Royale, which is a tremendous movie. And that was actually my first Bond movie, was that one. And so I don't know if that's my favorite, but it is my first Bond, and I'll always remember that very fondly as Daniel Craig's interpretation being my gateway into the character, into that pantheon of actors and stories. But now Daniel Craig, his time as Bond has come and gone. His last adventure was in the movie No Time to Die. Great title, by the way. I believe that was in 2021. And I remember there was talks about what that movie would set up for James Bond. Uh, because, now forgive me, I don't remember this specifically, because I haven't seen all the Daniel Craig ones, to be honest. I don't think I saw Spectre, which I think was the last Bond before he did No Time to Die. So that was the one preceding it. But in No Time to Die, Daniel Craig's Bond, he's either listed as MIA or retired or something like that. And so his 007 status has been revoked, so that there's a gap in the agency there. And what happens is that a new character comes in and takes up the mantle, because in the world of James Bond, there's only a handful of 00 agents, and when James Bond isn't there to be branded as 007, they have a seat filler. I don't mean that to be demeaning, but they have a new 007 come in, who was played by Lashana Lynch, who she's a black woman. And I remember in the movie, James Bond gets called in for a briefing. So does Lashana Lynch. James Bond turns to her and says, "Who are you?" She says, "I'm Agent 007." And James Bond is like, "I'm Agent 007." Then there's this discussion about, yes, well, you were technically dead or you were retired, and we had to, for Queen and Country, we had to have another 007 step up. Okay, so there was talk that was going to be how they were going to set it off. That in the next iteration of James Bond, it was going to be not only a person of color, but also a woman. And there were memes and jokes going around that from that point on, the character would be referred to as Jane Bond. Not James Bond, Jane Bond. And honestly, I thought that they were going for that. I did. They gave this character the 007 tag. And I thought, that's it. We just saw the torch being passed in real time. That ended up not happening. But now Daniel Craig has left the role officially. Spoiler alert, he dies at the end of Bond. So it's a totally clean slate. They can do whatever they want with the character now. And there's a lot of discussion online. Who's going to play him? When is it going to be set? Will it be funny? Will it be serious? Yada yada. But there's this talk about um, should it be a person of color and should it perhaps be a female? And I'm going to open this up a bit. I am going to open this up a bit because I have no problem with James Bond being played by a person of color because I don't think the character's race is intrinsic to that character. What is intrinsic to the James Bond character is a few things. He's British, he's a male, and he's a womanizer. And that's pretty much it. You can love or hate that. You can think that maybe Bond shouldn't be so much of a womanizer, shouldn't be so much of a playboy, because that is perhaps demeaning and sexist. But that's just how the character is. When the character was envisioned, oh gosh, I think it was Ian Fleming. I think that's the author's name, and then adapted to the screen by the producers. There was this the thesis statement for Bond was that every man wanted to be him, and every woman wanted to be with him, and that's how we got the Bond that we all know and love. That's how we got the cool dude, the cool spy who dresses nicely and drives fancy cars and shoots guns and has cool gadgets. When you think of spy, you think of James Bond because of the legacy that character has been built on. And I think it would do the character a disservice to have him be played as a woman. And I think that it's difficult because one could easily say, well, why don't you just have her, Jane Bond, chase men, go after men? I don't think audiences would be able to handle that. I think they would view it as a really poor and sloppy rendition of a beloved character. But what I think we are more adapt for is the idea that Bond could be played by an African American, someone of a different race other than white. And I think that would work so long as a few tenets remain that he's British, a male, and that he's a womanizer. Because in the online discourse revolving around Bond, there's the idea that Idris Elba, who's a great actor, who is an African American, there's talk that he could play Bond. And I can't remember. I think he said he had talks about it, but I'm not sure. But what's really the biggest disqualifier for him is that I think he's too old. Sadly, I think he's too old because the talk about the next James Bond is that this character is going to be this rendition of the character for the next 10 to 15 years. 10 to a minimum, 15 to the max, I think, which is a huge part of a person's life. And I don't think people will have an issue with a black man playing James Bond. I don't think people have an issue with race swapping of characters really at all. Funny enough, though, I don't have an issue with that at all. And I know some people do. But I mean that. When the live action remake of The Little Mermaid came out under Disney, they had an African American woman play Ariel, the mermaid. That caused an uproar. I didn't get it. Because for me, it's a version of the character. It's a rendition. For me, it didn't matter because the animation still exists. The animated version still exists with her being the white mermaid. What's the issue with her being black now? I don't get it. There was a Batgirl movie that was being made by Warner Brothers. In that movie, Batgirl was played by a woman of color. I don't have an issue with that. I never did. I thought they should cast the right person for the role. And I thought, okay, since she's in the role, she's the right person. You might attribute some ill will to that and say, well, they only gave her the role because she's black. And whether that's accurate or inaccurate. I think that's a very cynical way to look at these things, and I advise you to not look at it in such a cynical way. Speaking with, or keeping it with Warner Brothers, J.J. Abrams, director of The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker and a few other movies, he had a deal with Warner Brothers. He was going to produce a Superman movie, and Michael B. Jordan of Black Panther and Creed fame was going to play Superman. I don't know if that's still happening, but he's a person of color who would inherit the character who up into every other iteration has been played by a white man. I don't have any issue with that. I don't. I don't have any issues at all with characters being different races when it comes to different renditions. I really don't. And so I think that if James Bond was to be a black man in this next iteration, I won't have a problem with it. And I'd welcome it because I think that they should get the best actor that they possibly can for the role. And if that actor happens to be black, go for it. But if the actor also happens to be white, who's the best, they should get the person who is best for the role, not someone simply based off of their skin color. But before I close out, I want to talk about something else in relation to that as well, because those examples that I just mentioned all have to do with fiction. James Bond is a fictional character, as is Superman, as is Batgirl. It's much more easy for them to change people playing them and colors and renditions of them in all these different iterations. What about when it comes to nonfiction, when it comes to retelling history? How do we feel about race swapping in that? Because there's a movie out now, out as in it's available for streaming, called Blitz. That's it, just the one word Blitz, like derived from Blitzkrieg or as in Blitz from football. And in Blitz, the movie is set during World War II in London when the Germans began their Blitz campaign of nightly bombing of the London populace. And this movie follows a child who, because in World War II, the bombing was so horrific, was so continuous that families would send their kids away from the bomb sites on trains to escape, to be raised and kept safe on these farms, where hopefully, if the parents survived, they could reunite with the kids, because the moms had to stay back to work in the factories and the dads had to stay back to volunteer to be soldiers. So the kids had to just get out of there because they were the future. Future had to live. And in the movie, there is a African American boy who is sent away on the train, and he gets off the train, he jumps the train, he escapes it to get back into London so he can go find his family. He doesn't want to be separated from his mom. And it's about this kid going through the trials of the World War II environment and also facing racism and segregation and persecution along the way. And along that journey, he befriends a black army man, a soldier. Excuse me, I can't think of the word. He befriends a black soldier who they share stories and they teach each other life lessons about how it's important to be a man and to accept who you are. And this is all under the guise of World War II. And the movie is not bang bang pew pew. It's not full of explosions, violence, and action. It's a character study. It's the war itself it's a backdrop, and you have this human exploration of this kid going through this environment and befriending a soldier along the way. But people, I didn't know this. I didn't, and this is my own fault because I should have done some history, research on this. People got mad about it. They bumped into it because, unbeknownst to me, during that time of World War II, there was a very, very small black population in London. I've seen estimates of 1%. I've seen some less than 1%. I've seen some more than 1%, but nothing gets over around the idea of 3. So people online called it propaganda, saying that they're sandwiching in this story of racism, this story of persecution, uh, in this retelling of history, and by having it done with black actors telling, having the characters be black, they're doing history a disservice because that wasn't representative accurately of how history actually was. And I'll be honest, I really liked the movie. I liked it before I knew all that, and I like it after I know all that. Because when I was locked into the movie, I was just that. I was locked in. I wasn't thinking about how that's a black kid and a black soldier. Does this fit with a World War II setting? I don't know. No, I was locked in with the story, with the stakes. Will they live? Will they not? Are they going to make it? Are they not? I didn't think of the character's race at all until the movie wanted me to think about the character's race. But some people will get upset with that because uh, there weren't many black families and weren't many black soldiers serving in the army at that time. To that, I'd say, well, there is historical record that there were minorities in London during World War II. So it's possible that there could have been black families and black soldiers, you know, as a part of, that frontier. I don't know. For me, it's just as simple as that. If there's record of these people living there, then there's surely evidence and credence of these people being involved in the ways the movie portrays. But again, let's say it isn't. Let's say it was entirely white, front, back, left, right, center. Should the movie have been told through white actors? I personally don't think so. I personally don't. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's wrong, because maybe we should strive for accuracy when it comes to history. But for me, it boiled down to, did they get the right people for the job? I thought they did, because I was just about darn near moved to tears with this movie, because it portrays the horrors of war without you ever actually seeing any gore and violence. There's fires and there's explosions and you hear bombs dropping, but it's not Saving Private Ryan. It's not Hacksaw Ridge. It's very atmospheric. And the director who made the movie Blitz, his name is Steve McQueen. Funny enough, he has the exact same name as the actual actor Steve McQueen, who was in the movie Bullet, but this is an entirely different person. Steve McQueen, I think, is a tremendous filmmaker. He made the movie 12 Years a Slave as well as the movie Shame, and he himself is an African American man, and he's British as well. So for him, this story, this rendition that he wanted to tell was surely very personal. And I think that's conveyed very expertly on the screen. So I don't know. I think that this could potentially lead to another conversation, a more deeper conversation. But for myself, even in the guise of history, I think the same, uh, way of thinking still applies. I choose to judge people based on the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. And again, there are different ways of doing this when it comes to fiction versus nonfiction. But again, despite the story of Blitz possibly being told unfaithfully by being portrayed with black actors, I didn't have an issue with that because I found it also compelling. I wasn't going to have an issue with Batgirl being played by a black woman when in most renditions she is white, because I had a feeling I was going to find it compelling. Same with Superman, and same with James Bond. All I want are good stories told by good actors. And for me, the color of people's skin doesn't matter. And I want people to think about this as we move forward, because we are going to get another James Bond. We are going to get more history movies told. We are going to get more superhero stories told. And I think that there are times when they may deviate from the quote unquote source material, where we bend uh, colors and religions and creeds. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I really don't. But again, I want this to lead into a larger conversation. When the podcast episode ends, when you turn this off, when you do whatever it is you do in the evening, prepare for work or whatever. When it ends, I want you to continue to think about this stuff. I don't want this to just be, well, now it's done. I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to think about it anymore. No, I want this to stay in your minds beyond the episode. And that's why I wanted this to be at the end. That's why I wanted this discussion about fiction versus nonfiction and the roles that race play into that and be at the very end. And yeah, I'm very thankful again for the overwhelming amount of support that you guys have given me for the podcast. And I hope it can lead into very fun and easy conversations like, is ham better than turkey? Is Denny's better than IHOP? But then I also think it should serve its purpose of getting into very important conversations. What is the importance of race and representation? And I want to have more conversations about that going forward. So again, just thank you so much for listening. Thank you for those who maybe don't like my opinions but continue to listen anyway. I hope that this stuff makes you think, and I hope that you had a great Thanksgiving, and I hope that you have a great continuation of the holiday season as we progress further into the Christmas portion of December. And to close us out, to bring it back to my favorite Thanksgiving movie, I will leave you with a quote from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. You are messing with the wrong guy. Thank you for listening. My name is James, your host that knows the most, and I will see you next time. All right, have a good one.